Hi, I'm Michael Turton, and this is my friend Donovan Smith, the very single Donovan Smith.
Singular. I prefer to think of it as singular.
Here today with another edition of Current Affairs Taiwan.
All right, so as you can see, we've got microphones. And so in theory, sometime this week, once the accounts have been set up for podcasting, I haven't set up the accounts yet, but with a bit of luck, if this goes well, we actually will have a file, and then I'll have to upload them to various places. So it may take a few days, but I know a lot of you have asked for podcasts, and so we got the equipment here. And with luck, it's going to actually work. So let's see how it goes.
All right, first of all, both of us would like to implore you to donate blood. The island is suffering from a blood shortage.
Yes, and that's a serious thing, not a joke. We do joke a lot. But yeah, no, right now, there's, if you look online, there are a lot of, if you actually go to Hackstrong, HAXSTRONG, on Facebook, they have a lot of information on this. There are some specific requirements, for example, if you're a British national, but they have all these rules up there, so you can look into that.
Wow, thanks. All right, so it's a week of boycotts this week. Let's see. The Chinese have shut down. Is it everyone? No one's allowed to come here now?
Well, no, they shut down the free independent traveler, so the individuals are no longer allowed to come. Now, before, they'd allowed the citizens of 47 cities to have the right to apply to be an individual traveler to Taiwan, and they turned off the switch for all of them, and now you can only come over on a tour group, although I believe you said something, there's a rumor, was it you?
Yeah, there was a rumor running around that the tour groups are going to be shut down too.
Wow.
So, sooner or later, that would be huge.
Yes, yes. Now, I wrote a piece on this, which was in part based on something you wrote,
Right.
An excellent piece that you wrote, that this is primarily for internal consumption in China. Why don't you explain why?
I think we talked about this last week.
Did we talk about it last
how
week?
Beijing is trying to legitimate it.
Oh, right, yeah.
Force
I think we
against
did.
Taiwan, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So the other boycott that happened this week was in the movies.
Yes, so the Golden Horse Awards, which are basically the Oscars for the Chinese language speaking world, the Sinosphere, a lot of people like to call it. And then a bunch of the Hong Kong companies followed suit after China made this announcement. So yeah, this year now that presumably leaves Singapore and some other markets that and presumably indie films maybe from Hong Kong will still participate.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a blow, and it's a soft power issue for China. Their desire for control keeps interfering with their soft power extension.
Yeah.
So, and then we had what happened? One of the bubble tea companies expressed support.
Well, first, yeah, that was Yifang in Hong Kong, not in Taiwan or China, I think.
So
it's in Hong Kong.
It's a chain that extends across all three places.
Yeah, so it's a chain of tea houses, and it was started with Yifang, and then a whole bunch of them piled in. And it's all kind of confusing as to which one said what at one point, but effectively what it boils down to is a whole bunch of bubble tea chains emanating out of Taiwan have all had to come out in support of the One China policy, because, you know, when you're making bubble tea, you have to have one China in your heart to make those little tapioca balls go down properly. So, and of course a lot of people in China, a lot of, netizens are calling for boycotts, and so that's just depressing and sad, frankly.
Yeah, it is. And one of the things that happened this week was the mayors of Jinmen and Matsu and Penghu all decided to beg China to exempt them from the boycott.
Yep.
Which doesn't seem like it's going to be very possible, but the key thing is it shows how local governments keep trying to interact with China, and how China is wooing these local governments to go over their head and around the central government in Taiwan.
Yeah.
It's a very dangerous trend. We already saw that Ke Pi, the mayor of Taipei, Wen-je, met with Liu Jie, the head of the Taiwan Affairs Office in China, and of course Han Guoyu. And people often forget, he really is still the mayor of Kaohsiung, even though he doesn't ever seem to have done that job. So technically, he is a local government official.
Yeah, it is actually easy to forget that sometimes. Now, I mean, of all the places where they might make an exception, it probably would be Jinmen and Matsu. From their side, there would I could make a logical case from their side of thinking, because they know that people in Jinmen and Matsu are much closer to China.
Right.
They were separated from China in 1949, unlike Taiwan, which of course had been, and Penghu, which had been a Japanese colony for 50 years. Whereas Jinmen and Matsu were really part of China, and they have families on both sides of the strait there. They can see, they can see across the strait. So, if they were to actually open up Lianchang County, which is Matsu, and Jinmen, allow that would go a long way toward winning the hearts and minds of the people in Jinmen and Matsu, which is already an easier sell, I think, for China.
Right. In fact, they just opened a new water.
Yeah.
The water pipe from China over to, where was that, Matsu or Jinmen? I forgot.
Jinmen.
That's it.
And they want to build a bridge, I believe.
Yes.
And they're trying to promote that. Obviously, the government in Taipei is not real keen on that. Or that giant underground rail link from China, from Beijing to Taipei, that they keep talking about.
Well.
Yeah.
So a lot of other stuff going on this week with third-party politics.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Gou Taiming, the former head of Foxconn / Han Hai, is working on his independent campaign. A lot of talk around him. This week he announced he collected the first batch of signatures that he needs to have before September 18th, before the September 18th filing, so that he can file as an independent candidate.
Well, technically he didn't. It was some other people on his behalf.
Right.
But then they stopped signing up signatures while he's kind of making up his mind. But they passed the first hurdle already.
Yeah. He's still testing the water. He needs a vice presidential candidate. A lot of speculation about that.
Now we know that Ke has already come out and said that he hopes that Terry Gou will be the president. So that's actually convenient if the two want to work together. Even more convenient is Ke said, look, I'm the Taipei mayor. I don't want to be the vice president, because of course the vice president is not as good a job as the mayor of Taipei. If you really want to actually get something done, being the mayor of Taipei is much more powerful than the vice president.
And you're a lot more in the media eye.
Yes, exactly. So, quick, what's the current vice president's name?
Pence? Lucio?
Yeah, I know.
Wait, I'm getting there. Taining?
I think it's Chen Jianren or something like that. I literally can never remember this guy's name.
I can never remember it either.
I know. I mean, he's such a non-entity.
Yeah. He's a super nice guy, and he's good at his job.
Yeah, which is basically supporting the president and keeping your head low. But yeah, so we've got Terry Gou, who may or may not run. We've got Ke, who, now this is the big development. Really what this boils down to is that if Terry Gou runs, Ke won't. If Terry Gou doesn't run, there's a very high chance then that Ke will run. So now it's looking much more like it's going to be an either or in this situation.
Well, we got Wang Jin-pyng, who used to be the Speaker of the Legislature and a major KMT figure, unofficial head of the Taiwanese KMT. Where does he stand on all this? He's the unofficial head of all the local factions and local Taiwanese politicians inside the KMT. And if he comes over to one of these two gentlemen, perhaps he'll bring the factions. But then you were telling me earlier this week what happened with the Taichung factions? Yeah,
the red and black factions from Taichung, which are some of the most powerful in the country. They went down and with a gaggle of Taichung city councilors and some legislators, at least one, Yan Quanhang, which is Yan Qingbiao, who's major. Anyway, they all went down and visited Han Guoyu. So, I suspect they're keeping their options open. But of course they made, the obligatory noises about, party unity, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, the most powerful, most famous factional politician figure, Wang Jin-pyng, is still running for president, even though he flat out says he's basically looking to the heavens to find a way for it to actually work, since he dropped out of the KMT primary. So he doesn't want to leave the KMT. He didn't want to run the KMT primary because it was clearly rigged in favor of Han Kuo-yu. And he's still running for president, but he doesn't want to leave the KMT, but he's not the KMT, he's not their nominee, so it's a little bit confusing at this point. But he has just met up with Terry Gou, and of course they didn't talk about the race.
No,
no, not at all. And there's supposed to be a three-way meeting between Wang Jin-pyng, Terry Gou, and Ke. That was announced on the TV news I saw.
Yeah. So there's been a crapload of polls lately, and all of them are about people who have not yet entered the race, except for Tsai and Han.
Yes.
So I've just been ignoring them.
Yeah.
And also, some of them are quite partisan. There was a poll this week that was flogged in the green papers, but it came from the Taiwan New Constitution Party, which is the deep green guys who, until Tsai became the primary, were hating on her. And then now they said, oh, Tsai is leading by nearly twice the other two. So, what can you do with this stuff? I'm not going to even pay attention to them until all these candidacies are firmed up in September.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's there's so much in the air, and there's so much can happen between now. Election day's in January. But by the way, just a couple things to keep in mind is that coming up is they're going to have to make a decision on who's going to be running and who's not going to be running for president in early September, because they have to fill out all the paperwork and they have to get in all the signatures by the 17th or so.
Right, so they can file by the 18th deadline.
Something like that, yeah. 18th or 19th, yeah. So so basically they're going to have to make up their mind pretty soon. So then we'll have a clear idea. Hopefully.
Okay. So Wen-je, meanwhile, has been trying to establish himself as a viable third force, and he's been talking about how he's acceptable to Washington. And so this week, the Formosan Association for Public Affairs circulated a piece saying, hang on a second, Washington actually hasn't given Wen-je their blessing. Probably most of them don't even know who he is.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's probably how it works. So the point here is not so much whether Ke's telling the truth, but that Ke keeps positioning himself as, I'm not green or blue. But then in order to make himself national, he has to take the same positions that these guys do. Yes, we're acceptable to Washington. I'm not blue or green, but I'm acceptable to Washington, and I'm going to support the deep blue candidate in the race.
Right.
Gou timing. So
so
sooner or later, this is going to start being noticed by voters.
Yeah, and which I think now is probably a good way to good time to segue into what he's, his new party and what does it actually stand for. And if you actually look at what he's saying that he stands for, it's basically, it's all. You could boil it all down to good governance. That's basically what this party stands for. In other words, it might as well be campaigning on "We love mothers and bubble tea." Nobody's going to argue with, "Oh, gee, I don't want to vote for the party that believes in good governance." Oh no! So at this point, it's like a party isn't going to attract a lot of attention until it takes a real stand on something.
Right. The other thing about running on good governance is that one corruption case kills you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, neither the KMT nor the DPP has been destroyed by the zillions of corruption cases that have hit both parties.
Yeah, because there's people who actually believe in their underlying principles.
Exactly, and they have an
party.
ideological position, and Ke has not evolved one yet.
No.
And we talked about this before, he's going to run into the same problem that everyone does who tries to step out of this blue-green divide. He's going to, boom, bang up against that China wall.
Yep, exactly.
So, and he'll land somewhere, blue or green.
And there's, by the way, a great piece from Nathan Batto on Frozen Garlic about the China cleavage, as he calls it. And that basically you're going to have to take a stand on it. I mean,
Yeah.
And he goes into some depth about it. It's not a new position, but he explains it really, really well. So be sure to check that out.
That's Frozen Garlic, the blog Frozen Garlic, run
Yeah.
by Nathan Batto, who's a wonderful political scientist here in Taiwan.
Yes, very, very good.
There's been a couple of good pieces this week. There was a piece at Katagalan on populism that looked at that was really good. That looked at Terry Guo and Wen-je and Han Guoyu. And Taiwan Insight also had a nifty piece on the same thing this week, I think it was.
Yeah.
So there's a lot out there written.
Yeah, actually, I have some pieces coming out on Ketagalan Media and on the News Lens
Oh, fantastic.
over the next few days. So be sure to check out both of those.
The populism piece was on the News Lens, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Was
sorry
it?
about that. Yes, I think so.
So yeah.
Speaking of media,
Mm-hmm.
how about Beijing? The tentacles
Oh,
are
yes.
extending into Taiwan.
Well, the good news is that we talked about the other week the Financial Times one from Catherine Hill or Hilla. Not sure how to pronounce her name, but
Hill. I
Hill.
heard, yeah.
Is it? Okay.
So I got it wrong last week. Sorry about that.
So that was really good. That she called attention to this problem, basically telling people what we already more or less knew, but she crossed her T's and dotted her I's and all that. And so now Reuters, not usually a very good outlet for Taiwan, but this time
That was my first reaction.
I know.
This is from Reuters?
I know. It was like, but yeah, they came out with a piece which basically buttressed that, and so this is really good news, because when up to this point the pan-blue media and KMT politicians have been kind of coming up with this line where every time the DPP talks about Chinese influence on the local media, it's just a red scare,
Right.
out to stifle the voices of the KMT, and it's a conspiracy, and they're just out to get us. Well, when and there's some people locally have been kind of like, well, maybe that's true, or I just don't know, or they're staying on the fence. But when the international media starts to cover this kind of thing, that gives a kind of objective third-party viewpoint,
Right.
and so it's not viewed as a partisan choice by the media.
Right.
Financial Times is not widely known for being pan-blue or pan-green, for example. So this helps, I think, the government to tackle the problem, and it is genuinely a problem.
So the Reuters said that they were paying, that the Taiwan Affairs Office was paying to have puff pieces about how great it is to do business in China, placed in the local newspapers.
Yeah.
That was one of the things they talked about.
Mm-hmm.
But on Twitter, Paul Huang, who's a fiery and very controversial tweeter on Twitter, pointed out that none of the major pan-blues have covered this. None of the major pan-blue media has actually covered the Reuters report. It's only appearing in the green media. So this is also a pattern that we've seen in the blue media, that when something negative comes out, it just disappears in the blue media. You can't find it.
Yeah. Now the good news is I try and watch the sort of more centrist TV stations, and they are covering.
They're covering it good.
So like Next, which is not really deeply blue or green, frankly.
Sure.
I actually kind of get the feeling that different people on the channel are a bit more blue and a bit more green. That's just my personal suspicion. They're covering it. So yeah, if you're a CTI watcher, you're never going to hear about it. But the green ones and the center, the more centrist ones, they're all covering it.
Yeah, I think it's important to note here, not the outside source like Reuters or FT is not just a third party, objective third party. Remember, for Taiwanese who are very insecure about their place in the world, outsiders validate.
Yeah.
So they're constantly seeking this validation of outsiders, and now here's this huge rejection, boom, by an outsider. So, Oh, what else is happening this week? There's a new movie being
Yes.
made about the Rover incident of 1867.
Yes, and I think you should tell us about it, because on your blog you've written so much about that whole era and the characters involved. If you really want to know more about the Rover incident, go to the View from Taiwan. It's a fantastic blog. Unfortunately, it's not being updated now, but the content's still there.
Yeah,
So
I've got
tell
a long
us about
piece
it.
on it, but
Yeah.
essentially what happened is a ship wrecked off Kending and then landed there, and the Aborigines killed most of the people, and a couple of the Chinese sailors got away. Some stories say one, some say two, and they went over to Tainan, which was then the seat of the government here. And the Qing people, the Qing government notified the American envoy in Amoy, in Fujian. So the Americans actually attacked Taiwan. They landed
Yep.
near what is now the aquarium,
Yep.
off in Kending, and they fought for 6 hours with the Aborigines. One guy got killed, and that was a failure. No one got punished, and nobody learned a lesson. So the envoy in Amoy then organized a set of troops. Charles Gender, who was a very famous name in Taiwan history, wrote a wonderful book about his experiences here, and also ended up later in Japan. And he was one of the people who helped convince the Japanese to send troops here in 1874 for the Mudan incident. That's a whole other thing. So what happened was, essentially, he came down, they sat down with the Aborigines, Qing guys, a couple of British people just showed up, and they hammered out a deal with someone who might have been the head of something down there,
Yeah.
to get them the Aborigines to get them to stop killing the crews from ships that were wrecked there. And one of the outcomes of that deal was the lighthouse at Ulonbi, which was eventually built by a British engineering firm. And the lighthouse head also wrote a great set of memoirs. What's his name? George Packard or Maynard or something. I forgot his name. But anyway, so that's going to be a very interesting movie. I'm really looking forward to watching it.
Yeah, they also built the walls at Hongchen around that time too.
Did they?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow.
I think that was in response to that the Qing felt that they finally under pressure they had to move sort of a more forward base down there.
They had to show that they really owned that area.
Yeah.
Because they denied it to the Japanese at one time.
Yeah, and that was turning out to be a problem because the Japanese were making motions like, well, okay, if you can't control Taiwan, how about if we do it? So they've been looking at colonizing Taiwan for a while. So yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've reached the end of the show. Remember, Donovan Smith is single, and probably will be next week, sadly.
Yes. I'll be spending the week trying to figure out how to get the podcast working. So, so yeah, all right. So anyway, keep an eye out. We'll be posting up on Facebook. I'll be posting up on Facebook, and we'll share it around if when I manage to get the podcast going, assuming it's recorded okay. Yeah, this should be exciting because I know a lot of you have mentioned to us in your comments in person that you really would prefer a podcast version because we're hideous to look at. That's the main reason.
Are you serious?
Yeah. No, because people like to listen to it while they work.
Right.
Yeah. And I know some of you will turn on Facebook and just turn up the volume, but that's not really very...
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so have a good one. See you next week.
All right.